Well, it's the beginning of the astrological month of Cancer, and that means it's time to have a look at the month ahead. Remember, the months astrologically begin around the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of the month. Varies a little year to year, which is why it sometimes looks different in your newspaper or magazine. But this year, it's just begun yesterday, and so it's time to check it out. And quite an important time to check it out. So much distressing, chaotic drama has been happening in South Africa, has not only got us very concerned about what's going on, but also very concerned about what the future holds for us. Of course, during the time of the civil unrest and the insurrection that happened in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng in the last 2 weeks, many people were very concerned that this is suddenly the end of everything, and suddenly all the old unfinished business that the government has ignored for such a long time has finally reared its head. And while there is certainly an element of all of that in what happened, of course a lot of people were asking me astrologically what happened, and this is something that I have been talking about really since last year and repeatedly in the chart of Cyril Ramaphosa. Which leads me immediately to say that from the astrological point of view, it wasn't really South Africa that was under attack, it was Cyril Ramaphosa that was under attack. Many of you will remember that for many months now, I've been saying that Ramaphosa's enemies are much more serious than we realize, and then that perhaps even he realizes. I've said on a number of occasions that I even fear for his life. And he seems to be playing his cards so close to his chest that we've just got to assume that he understands how dangerous it is. And that is a warning that I sounded repeatedly, that he has dangerous enemies. From my point of view, looking at the charts, that's what happened in South Africa. That the attempted insurrection and the violence that grew out of it, we know that much of the violence was the runaway out of control that followed the political events and the attempted insurrection events leading up to those events of the 8th of July. We don't need to go into detail about those here, but we do remember clearly that the ANC is a deeply divided party and that Ramaphosa has very serious enemies in the ANC, as I have kept on saying. And it seems as if this was an effort to discredit his government, destroy his government, perhaps him in the process. The truth, though, is admitted by the government itself that they didn't see this coming. They weren't prepared for it. Their intelligence services were unprepared. And what we really see is what everyone knows, that the infighting and self-interest in the ANC has gone so far that they're not even able to detect things like a plot against the government. That is what needs to give us great concern. We've known for a long time that the broken ANC can take down the country with it, and it's beginning to look more and more like that could really happen if any of this goes on for much longer. Unfortunately, it does go on. So astrologically speaking, the events that we've seen now will gradually be brought more and more under control and disappear. We must not get complacent. We face a real danger that Ramaphosa will, despite the obvious attacks on him and his presidency, he's clearly always been someone who never really wanted to face things or deal with them very much or very directly. And so we do need to be concerned that he's going to get into a complacent state of thinking everything is fine and not prepared for the early months of 2022 when much of these troubles surface again. I don't know whether there will be violence and chaos and insurrection again, although of course I, like you, would not be surprised if that's how it emerged. But certainly, astrologically speaking, the danger is real throughout 2022, but especially in the first quarter, in the early months of the year. It does look like much of this can come to the surface again. So once again, Ramaphosa really needs to get in touch with what's going on in the party and its machinations against him. Unfortunately, we can't cure the fact that he's more concerned about his party than he is for the country, and that the party itself is much more involved in its own business and dealing with its own infighting and corruption and all of that, then they're interested in or capable of dealing with what's happening in the country. What we did see in the insurrection events is that, well, as some journalists put it, if we have to, we're just going to have to do without them, and we're going to have to do it ourselves. It does seem as if the people are very strong in this country, and perhaps that's what will happen. But certainly, one way or another, from the astrological point of view, the danger is not over. The people and the country will survive, though, even if the president and the ANC don't. The ANC is on a path to destruction. 2022 does seem to be the year where the ANC really does start crumbling under the weight of its division and because of what might happen in terms of the presidency. Doesn't look clear that Ramaphosa's presidency can go beyond 2022 very easily. But in the month of August ahead of us, we can look forward to things getting a little bit quieter, but not getting much easier. The chart shows that South Africa now faces a reckoning. We come sharply down to earth. Economically, we know there's going to be a very strong impact of the events and as well as, of course, the ongoing pandemic. But a sharp reckoning we do face, and this next period, now in August and in the many, many months ahead, right throughout next year as well, we are all about coming down to earth hard. It's going to be a difficult time for us, but it is going to be the time that pulls us finally together. One thing we've known for a very long time is that it's very difficult to get democracy to work properly in this country because people tend to vote on loyalty, on history, on family, on all of those kinds of things, and that's made it difficult to establish a true democracy. The great and beautiful irony of the events that happened in this country is that it takes us back to the grassroots and the groundwork. Out of all of this, new leaders will eventually emerge that hopefully can take the country onto a much more successful path in the future. It is clear that the old ways, the old parties and the old leaders are not going to be able to help this country, and there's a period starting right now that takes around about 2 years as the country comes to grips with that and begins to form new civil structures and new political parties and hopefully eventually a new government that is capable of actually taking South Africa forward into the future. So the positive outcome of the events of July 2021 will be that new democratic civil structures and new democratic parties and new united people and parties emerge out of it. We've now got a difficult period to go through that might include more danger in the country in the months of next year, but in the end will bring us to a much stronger position. And despite the economic hardship, our chart continues to show that we managed to stumble through and recover here and there. And as usual, Rand will do better than we think it should, and all of those things are still going to keep us floating and intact and give us the ability to recover. So it's very important that despite the difficulty of the circumstances and despite the scary challenges that this astrological chart does show us, there is a very strong outcome. The end result of this is a stronger, better South Africa. And I'm not just saying that to be positive, it really is in the chart. The chart says we've entered the reckoning phase. We're going to have to stand up for ourselves, stand on our own feet, stand on our own shoes. That's us, the people of South Africa. It's clear that we can't rely on the old guard to lead us. We need to create a new guard. That's our project for the next 2 years. That's going to take us into the future. Aries, you're still in a strong position, but you might be a little bit overconfident about it. Confidence is great and it is going to serve you, but you must just be careful not to be too careless or reckless and assume things are going to work out better than they will. This seems to be because you are relying on someone or perhaps even depending on someone, and it's not an ideal situation for that. It's not that you're going to be let down this month, I'm sure you won't, but it does look like you might be being a little bit naive and not realizing that whoever you rely on or if you ever depend on is actually in it for something. They stand to perhaps gain more out of this relationship right now than you do. So that is what you need to be looking at. Get into the more selfish mode of what's in it for me. Important is to try and concentrate and focus your resources. You really need to be concentrating on your own stuff, matters at home. It's not a good time for moving around. You're feeling very restless, you're ready for the next thing, you want to change something. It's not quite a time to do that. You've built up a lot of strength recently. You now want to turn that into something much more tangible, something much more real, so that as you go forward in the months ahead, you're not vulnerable to what other people are trying to get out of you, because they are. Taurus, this is a time rich with possibility for you in terms of getting things done, in terms of getting new things on the go, but it's only going to happen if you're really willing to think out of the box. You need your security, you prefer things that are familiar to you, so thinking out of the box is a little bit easier said than done. Not that you're not capable of it, it's more like you're not willing to do it. So that's why I'm trying to stress this is the time you need to be a bit more willing. In many things in your life, different approaches, different solutions, innovation is going to be the way to make things work. On top of a little bit of insecurity is a lot of anxiety and worry showing in your chart at the moment, and that is causing you to narrow your vision and focus on those things which are comfortable, safe and familiar, and those are the things which aren't working right now. So you also need to realize that you're worrying about things that you don't know about the outcome about. Your chart says it's all about uncertainty, and uncertainty is really just about newness and fresh new things that you don't really know where they're going to go. The charts say this is a really good time to capitalize on them, meaning they are going to go well for you in the end. So put them into action. You might need input from others. Look out of the box. People that you don't usually rely on, different kinds of people, new people. Let their input take you to an altogether new level. Gemini, it looks like another really busy period for you. And it looks like there's going to be a lot more work than you can actually cope with. This is a great month to learn about delegating and sharing the load, but making sure it's balanced carefully. There are some challenges in all your relationships with regards to balance, both your personal relationships and your professional relationships. Professionally, you're taking on way too much and trying to carry the whole load yourself. Emotionally, you might be taking on too much of your partner's feelings and not really discussing it out and finding out what is your responsibility and where do they really stand. Maybe you think there's a whole bunch of stuff expected of you and you feel pressured, and that isn't really what's going on. So relationships this month, as ever, communication is so important in relationships, but it couldn't possibly be more important right now because you're in danger of getting into unnecessary misunderstandings. On the other hand, all that hard work is really going to pay off. This is a great time for a month that needs heavy lifting, where there's a lot to be done, where you're trying to do a whole bunch of stuff in a small space. That's what makes the challenge so meaningful, to keep it in balance and to not overdo things. Things need to be done, but you just got to make sure they don't get done in such a way that leaves you wrecked and ruined by the end. Cancerians, for those of you in relationships, it's also an important time to sort out a proper balance of relationships. You are taking on way too much, and it does look like you carry the load in the family at the moment, or you're carrying your partner's load. It doesn't have to be that, and not all of us are in relationships, so it can also mean that it's your own load that is just weighing you down. It looks like a time when you can be experiencing a bit of melancholy, even feels like depression very often, and that can also drag your whole mood and month down along with it. So it's time to do some things to lighten it up. It's nothing that needs curing by a doctor, and it's nothing that can be rationalized away. It's just that you need to give yourself a bit of the other side as well. Some fun, some simple pleasures, all of those good things. For those of you not in relationships, this could be a month where relationships start, and it's a great opportunity to start them on the right foot. This is a time of fun and pleasure. That's a great way to get a relationship started. You must be careful, though, in new relationships, and in fact in any situations, not to allow your own emotional baggage that you're carrying right now and that needs to be carried to feed into anything else that's going on in your life at the moment. Your own issues are better served by you and sorted out by you, and that can also make you a little bit resentful against your partner, who you might think is putting all their issues onto yourself. get things back into balance, have a little bit of fun, things will be easier. Leo, also looks like your relationships are important right now, but in a very beneficial fashion. It certainly looks like it's a great time to become involved in professional partnerships, anywhere where people support your efforts or support that your work, the work that you do is really going to help you at this time. And of course, great new personal relationships can begin under the same circumstances. As the month goes on, you are going to increasingly feel a certain amount of powerlessness. And it's not so much that you're in a powerless situation, as in this is a time to begin to understand where do you stand with regards to your influence in your own affairs, life, and whatever's happening with your goals. It's really just time to reorient who's in charge of what in my life, in my work, or anything like that. Just get the power balance correct so that you feel much more effective. But this really is a great time to be standing on your own feet and asserting your own ideas. The balance between your own strong ideas and sense of power and people bringing help and support at this time is going to lead to a lot of success. Virgo, the balance you need to strike this month is between your head and your heart. As usual, your head has the upper hand, and your rational, anxious and worried self is going to keep on getting the better of where you stand emotionally. Not to say that there's anything wrong with your rational self, it just means it's out of balance. There are also areas of your life right now, especially your relationship, that actually need a more emotional and sensitive approach. It's great to think things through and it's great to be rational, but right now that approach is actually standing in the way of what's going on or what needs to happen in your relationships. So in the same way that there's a challenge to have a head-heart balance for yourself, also look in the relationship and find a balance between the practical and what needs to be done inside of the relationship and the emotional, what brings us together and what bonds us side of the relationship. It's an important month to spend quality time with your loved ones so that you build those bonds very, very strongly. There are indications that it's a great time for either a holiday, if you can manage to find a place to get away to that you're able to do that, or just bringing new stuff into your life. And it's a great time to share that new stuff with someone close to you. For those of you not in a relationship, getting involved in new things right now may very well find you in a relationship. So what have you got to lose? Librans, this looks like a month that is packed full of things that need to get done and that are really worth getting done. It's an important month professionally speaking. You can make great advances in your working life, and of course there's just a lot of stuff that needs to get finished. That getting that finished will seem like an advance all on its own. You're working with lots of different people, and that could be quite frustrating at this time. You also need to understand that there are some people who are going to let you down because you're depending on people for things that they're not going to be able to give you or just not going to do it. So don't be over-reliant on others at this particular time. However, there are indications of great help or support from people close to you, both in your working life and in your personal life, and especially from women, usually older women, but not exclusively so. That seems to show in your chart there's a lot of that kind of support around you at this time. So use that to build your emotional strength, which is looking great at the moment, and use that strength to kind of deal with anything that's happening at work right now. Best is to not depend too heavily on those around you. Do what you can for yourself. Take anything as an extra bonus, and that's going to get you past the finish line. Scorpios, this is a time when things are looking ever better day by day. You're feeling stronger, things are working better, and all of that is great as long as you don't get too complacent about it. It still looks like, despite being in a very strong position at the moment, your strength right now actually depends on those that you rely on around you, whether that's professional or personal. There's nothing wrong at all with that. It's necessary right now to be relying on those people. But that's just important that you don't fool yourself into thinking I'm an unshakable statue standing on my own feet. Sometimes it's good to be that. Maybe it would be good to be that right now. But the fact remains that right now you are actually very connected, especially to your social group or your friends. There's great help and love and good input. coming from the people around you who are the people most important and closest to you. This is a great time to be concentrating on friendships, on building relationships, and rebuilding some relationships, as the case may be. Financially, things are looking strong, but you're your own worst enemy at the moment, and this can be a time of overspending or some kind of careless or reckless spending that gets you into unnecessary trouble. You're in a strong position. Build strong networks, and your strong position will hold. Sagittarians, this looks like a month when the best thing to do would be to take time on your own, to withdraw a little bit, to concentrate on your spiritual life and your inner life and on all those things that you need to do to take care of yourself. Unfortunately, it doesn't look much like a month when you're actually going to be doing that. This looks like quite an exciting month for getting new things and spreading yourself far and wide, and that's going to be to your own detriment. In short, the challenge this month is not to end up being your own worst enemy by spreading yourself too thin and, worst case scenario, letting money slip through your fingers or overspending or somehow losing control of your own resources in some way. It does mean that it's not a fantastic time to be depending on other people or relying on them in any kind of a way. Some of that unnecessary spending is going to get caught up in other people, or some of just the unnecessary stuff would have been avoided if you just kept your nose down and concentrated on your own things at this time. The spiritual life really grows at times like this. It's a great time to look at yourself and ask, what do I need to let go of? Rather than letting anything slip through my fingers, there are things I can choose to let go of. That'll make it a good month. Capricorn, you increasingly feeling like your old self, in the sense that you are feeling strong and capable of taking charge of a lot what needs to be taken charge of in your life. And some of that is going to require you to call the shots and put some things to bed. You're going to have to, this is presumably in your working environment, shut some things down or shut some people down or end some things. But it's literally time to get rid of the unnecessary baggage that you've been carrying, as well as unnecessary stuff that doesn't belong to you and might involve some of those people that you really need to put your foot down about. But it's all about putting your foot down and acting in your power at this time. It's going to be a good month financially, and in terms of all your resources, you will see strength and solidity. You're beginning to understand how you can rely on yourself to sort things out right now, and you're feeling the energy return in order to do that. That all is great, but it could end up being at the cost of your personal life. You might be coming across as cold or distant, as if your own stuff and your work stuff is much more important than what's going on in your relationship life. So you and your professional life are strong. Put your energy into personal things, into relationships. That's where you're needed. Aquarius, you're also in a position to benefit from your own efforts in a way that is really satisfying. This is going to be one of the months when everything you do produces its clear results, and that's going to help you keep focused on the task at hand and able to make new goals and pursue them as well. It is important at this time not to get yourself involved in too many financial obligations or anything like that. It does look like your own resources are building. You're building a lot of security and strength in that regard finally, and you don't want to undermine yourself or put yourself at any risk because of that. There are even signs of financial increase at this time. But at the same time as that happens, we have on the other side some kind of demanding process. It could be people, and it seems to be even someone close to you who's trying to draw on your resources. It's kind of like just as things start working out for you, someone who depends on you starts pulling at your resources and at your energy, and seemingly even splitting your energy in some way. So be more selfish, focus on your own stuff, and focus on the relationships that work in a more balanced fashion at this time. It's a great opportunity to reassess relationships and just make sure that both people in every relationship stand to gain. Pisces, it also looks like it's going to be a gainful month for you. It does look like your financial resources are improving, and there might be even some unexpected or extra kinds of gains for you during the course of this month. your intuition can usually be heavily relied on. And it's not that this month is any particular exception, but it does look like there are people around you who are trying to take advantage of you and capitalize on your good fortune at this time. You are a bit of a soft touch, and you've been known to have real boundary issues when it comes to feeling sorry for people who you think need your help. Pretty much for anyone, really. This is a time when you're going to have those strong boundaries in place and be willing to be a little bit more selfish about it all. You can still help people, and your intuition will still serve you in being sensitive to the close people around you. But in terms of those close people, and especially your most important relationships, this is the month where you need to show some strength. You're going to be relied upon. Someone needs to lean on you who is close to you and who you can provide strength for. That's where you need to put any extra resources that you have. Don't just give them away. Be strong. Hope you were able to listen through the wild storm that's been raging on as I've been talking. I'll see you again here next week at the same time.